private label evolution seen in recent years has focused largely on retailers bringing to market higher quality products that offer shoppers value and something unique. But as product quality has improved, retailers also recognize the need to take product packaging designs to the next level. The recent efforts from the fresh market are a prime example of this mindset. Welcome to Store Brands Spotlight. I'm Greg Sleater, Executive Editor of Store Brands. Our guests are Michelle Beck, Director of Own Brands Merchandising with the Fresh Market, and Michael Duffy, Senior Vice President with Equator Design. We'll be discussing the effort by the Fresh Market to overhaul the packaging designs of its private label assortment, the motivating factors behind this change, and the impact the new designs have had on sales. Michelle and Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Well, it's good to have you both. And the topic of packaging is something that comes up a lot more now than I think it has in the past in terms of offering consumers designs that are eye-catching, obviously that showcase what's in the package, and also some of the challenges that people face when you're having to kind of meet all the requirements of ingredients and things like that. So I look forward to talking to you both today. Michelle, I want to start with you because I think historically, if you will, retailers and even product suppliers, the CPG companies, rebrand when there's an issue, when maybe sales are slowing down or there's some kind of core issue that they're having. That wasn't necessarily the case here with Fresh Market. So can you just talk about what the core business case was for the brand refresh and the new packaging?
Sure. Really, there was no catalytic moment for us. It is just part of who we are. We are an experiential brand, and our packaging is part of creating that experience and environment in our stores. So for us to stay relevant and really to resonate with current and future guests evolving, our packaging was and evolving that packaging always is the plan. And in fact, we really went after this refresh for long-term evolution so that we could create some internal systems and flexible brand guidelines that really could help us evolve over time.
When you were embarking on this process, what was the initial reaction kind of internally when this idea of a brand refresh, if you will, was first proposed?
Well, the initial reaction, I think, with any retailer is usually dread, because everyone knows that a redesign project is a huge undertaking, and every single retailer has to do this. We just all have to do this to be relevant. And so we always start those conversations a good couple years before we know it's time to come, because we have to get our senior leadership ready to wrap their heads around this, right? We also have to get the budgets in place. And so my job really internally was starting to create the story of what this was going to do for us, why this was necessary, and starting to build that expectation, not only internally, but also with our vendors, that this is a necessary part of what we do as a retailer to stay relevant in the industry, to stay relevant and resonate with our guests continually. And so once we had those conversations, it was really just now, let's find the partner that is going to be the best partner for us to help us get to the end goal of what we're hoping to do with our brand.
Michael, Equator was that partner that Fresh Market ultimately worked with. I'm curious if you can go back to when this conversation started and when the project started. What were the initial impressions that Equator got from the Fresh Market as they approached you with this challenge?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of layers to that, Greg. For a start, I was excited because I've always been a shopper at Fresh Market. So I have a completely natural customer relationship myself already. I'm based in Chicago, but I moved from the UK 18 years ago. And when I first came here, I thought it's basically not hard to find retailers that need great design. You know, we all know that the transformation of private label to private brand, to own brand, and now to exclusive own brand has been one over the last couple of decades, and it's rapid where it is right now. So it was very difficult, though, to convince retailers the value of good design. And that's something I started to learn as I was here longer. And what was brilliant about this project is one, the brand story was fantastic. They were unique at the time, but wanted to kind of revolutionize grocery within their world. I thought what was lovely that came out from initial conversations is they weren't really concerned with who the competition was. I talk to a lot of retailers all the time, and everyone's thinking about the competition. And what appealed to me was the competition really wasn't relevant. And that is fantastic when you think about building a brand, because when you build a brand, the only brand that's important is your own. And everyone else is taken. So you've got to create your unique fingerprints, what makes you you. And Fresh Market were obsessed with their story, which for people who create brands and do design is literally a dream project.
It feels like this project, Michael, was one that where Fresh Market wanted to elevate their brand. Was is there a different approach that you would take as the designer when you hear that versus, hey, we're trying to fix a problem versus, hey, we don't have a problem, we just want to be better?
Yeah, well, it depends what better is. And I think the definition of what being better is should mean many different things. It isn't just we have a problem. Every design brief really is solving a problem. Or sometimes a brand is in a great place, but it needs to be evolved, it needs to remain current. I think in the Fresh Markets case, there was a lot, when they was first done, it was fine. It did the job, but the market's moved on, the customers moved on. It's a different customer. And I think Fresh Market had moved on, but the brand probably hadn't moved on at the same pace. So when you think about elevating a brand, they were very premium. And this is what's beautiful about this brief is three levels of premium. But the packaging wasn't feeling like that anymore. So we needed to look at it and think, let's really not jump into this. And the creator never does this, is to jump into this as a design problem. Let's think of it as a brand opportunity first. So tapping into what the brand really stands for and what it means is where we begin. And the immersion of that, which any agency needs to do this, to accelerate getting to know that brand and love it as much as their client very quickly. We didn't have that track. Well, I personally did to a degree as being a shopper, but as an agency, you have to catch up with the love for the brand. Fresh Market was very unique in the fact that they absolutely empowered and enabled that to happen and saw the value in that just as much as we did. Now, I'll talk probably in different questions about this, but the united vision between the agency and the retailer is only what makes design truly amazing. And in this case, that was there from the very beginning.
Michelle, as you began to look for a design partner for the project, were there certain criteria that you were looking, that you were using to find that partner, and what ultimately made Equator the right fit?
Sure. I think number one, experience, obviously proven excellence in their field that is evident from the portfolio. I would say trustworthy and then confidence were the three things that we were really going after. For us, when we started vetting the different opportunity or options out there, first we looked at the portfolio. Now we aspire towards UK retailers. They're ahead of us in the domestic side. That's really where we were looking to go. Equator has great experience with a lot of international grocery retailer that would help us move forward in that direction. I think also during the presentations with them, they just blew our expectations out of the water, really. It was really evident from their presentation that they were in this for the long haul, that they were serious, and what we could become with them as a brand leader, I think in our space, was that hero story we always aspired to become, but we just didn't know how to get there by ourselves. And it's like they told us that story. And we were really looking for that experienced guide who could take us from looking like everyone else out there to becoming that standout brand that really reflected who we have always been and are. And so when they showed us that and they came to us with that mutual love for our brand and really a unified vision to see it succeed, it was almost love at first sight for us. We were sold right there at that first one. And definitely at the second one, they came in and it was just, oh, this is who we can be. So it was fantastic.
Michelle, you mentioned obviously Europe and the fact that grocers in Europe and retailers in Europe are ahead of the US right now in terms of penetration rates and things like that when it comes to private label. Was there a thought process on the fresh market side to bring a European flair to it, or was it just the fact that you knew the retailers over there had some more experience and those designers had that more experience as well?
Well, I think it's both for us because we were back in the 80s when we were founded, it was based on that European open fresh market feel. So twofold, yes and yes. Just seeing the brand evolution with UK retailers and how well they do brands there and how they excite. And they are seen as a brand now. It's not just as an own brand or a private label for that retailer. They are established brands in that area, and people go to them for their brand and just the brand story that they tell and the promise behind it and the loyalty behind it. I think we see that in some retailers here. Obviously, I'm not afraid to admit Trader Joe's does a beautiful job in that, in attracting that loyalty and that guest and creating that following around a brand. And that is something that we absolutely can do and we aspire to do. And I feel like UK retailers are a great um, vision for us to continue to move forward in aspiring to become more like that and get closer to where they are versus the domestic side.
Michael, when you heard that from Michelle and her team at Fresh Market, when they were kind of looking over at Europe and looking for that as inspiration, the designers often get giddy when they hear a client thinking broadly. Did that excite you more? Did that feel like you had more latitude in what you could bring to the table in terms of design ideas?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, my team is a global one to begin with. So yes, while our roots are in the UK and we've been firmly cemented in the UK for 25 years, in fact, it's 26 years now, and we've also been in the US for 18 years. So I think we think local and global at the same time. We do that for all of our clients. So we have an international design team. So our American designers become inspired by the UK and vice versa. So we have a very global team. This specific team was a UK team and worked with myself over here. What makes you excited about the brief is, like I say, they want to be different. So a lot of clients start off by saying they want to be different, and then the bravery drops off as the design starts to come out. And then what ends up being out in the real world versus what's on the design cutting room floor is very different. In this case, that never faltered. We gave lots of different options. So we had to think about products in a completely immersive, romantic way. Every single product had a story to tell, and Michelle was very clear about saying that from the beginning, whether it's a can of tomatoes or an incredible bottle of olive oil from Spain. There's different stories, and that needs to come through. So to do that, you have to have personality that comes through. And Equator just drink that every day because we are a collection of artists, whether we're photographers, within our realm of creative, it's not just designers. We have strategists, we have illustrators, we have photographers, food stylists, and they all work very much together in integrated teams. So when you hear about a retailer wanting to celebrate all of those things that allow you to express and flex all of your muscles in one brand, it really is a dream project, but it's the relationship that actually brings it to life. And I can't stress that enough here. Um, that somebody believing in that vision with you, you obviously needing to nail what that brand's about, and then being completely aligned with every single person in that retailer was paramount. I mean, we had conversations with the CEO, with the board, with the investors, with the head merchants of all the different departments. We spent a whole week doing that before we even started getting a pencil to paper, was to really just understand. And as creative agency, you're always looking to what the point of difference is. You're hoping it, and you don't always find it. But sometimes when there really is a genuine point of difference and an excitement that sets them apart, the design should reflect that. And that's what we got into. So it's like the most honest I could ever be about a brief. This was a dream brief. We had designers fighting over themselves. What was awesome is we did it all in the beginning, and we created the strategy, we created the design, we created the system. While that flexibility and category relevance and personality was really important. The unification and the thread and the correct way of tiering those levels of premium was also very important. You've got to get a balance there. But the design really started in its real true strength after the design was approved, because then every single category is an incredibly amazing creative opportunity every single time. Whether you're in salsa or you're doing ice cream, you have to flex and approach it with that same fresh creative intent of still being loyal. So that's when you get briefs that designers love working on. And we've, lucky enough, we have a very eclectic team that work very well together to do that.
Can I add to that, Greg? Just to that point. So we came in with them wanting that personality. We came in with them saying, we need you to push us out of our comfort zone. And they did just that. They came to us with concepts, and they had a safe one. They had a, let's push your limits a little bit. And now let's really push your limits a little bit. And what we loved about that was we actually respected their creativity. We respected that design sense. And we gave them room to try those new things and to push us out of our comfort zone. We also had me and our creative director making all the decisions on this, and we only sent them up to higher level when we really wanted to push the comfort zone in the company. And that's when we would go get additional approval, so to speak. So we had a very small, intimate team so that we could continue to do this and make decisions that were unified and aligned. And I would say out of probably almost 500 concepts, we only pushed back maybe 3 to 5 max. That they
That's
came
true.
with concepts that we walked away and said, that's the one. Let's move forward. Let's go into artwork. To the point where we started this last June, we are 14 away from being done on 526 in September. So that, for as small a team as we've had, or we have on our side, and they had, that is remarkable. And the other thing I would say is our senior leadership trusted us enough to be
Huge.
able to make these decisions for the brand, that they gave us the autonomy to make decisions and move forward. And these things didn't get caught up in a bunch of red tape, which can happen, I think, in retailers. And honestly, it was refreshing. And some of the things that I think you'll see out there as far as what we were able to push the limits on, as far as adding personality, not only did we really push the limit, you will start seeing those starting to come out in stores now in different ways. So it was really an exciting experience.
Michelle, can you give me an example of a category or a product where that limit was really pushed?
Oh, 100%. So if you would look at our inside, what we use for our coffee cup. So we have coffee by the cup stations. We have little sampling cups. We sample all the time in our stores, the new flavors of coffee. That cup, and I wish I had one with me so I could show it to you, but
I don't.
it is a cast of characters that basically tells the story of the fresh market, and you can see elements of the fresh market within it. We have little, what are called Easter eggs within that, where you can see when we were originated in 1982. You can see like a little butcher shop, and it's just a whole cast of characters that really evokes personality. And these cast of characters are going to start showing up in other ways throughout the store. So if you walk into one of our stores, go to a coffee by the cup station, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. In fact, we
Coffee
just
is great
launched
too.
a mini tote bag that has that illustration of that cast of characters on it, that was literally just launched like a day ago. There's a reel on it.
Interesting. So it's not just for the bottle or the bag, if you will, the package, but these are, it's a coffee cup that people are now walking out of the store with. So at some
Yes,
point, your customers are doing a little marketing for you as well.
100%.
Big time.
Right.
Shopping
Interesting.
bags, all of those things. I mean, it's if you ever open the trunk of your car and you're taking your groceries out, why not have an advertisement for this incredible experience of fresh market coming out of day too? So when you think about a coffee cup, it's a very functional, generic thing where most people just slap a logo on it. And we thought, and this is this is giving a creator permission to go out there and put something in front of a client that surprises and delights them. And it is a bit of a risk, but design is a risk. You can either follow everybody else or you can do
Mhm.
something completely different. So when we put it out there, um, it was just like, why not create a smile in the customer's hand when they walk around the store and have a lovely cup of coffee while they're selecting the groceries? And this went all the way up to the CEO, didn't it, Michelle? Which was lovely.
Sure
He
did.
picked it without any doubt. That's
Mhm.
the one because that's the one that makes me smile. If it makes me smile, it makes our customers smile.
Yep.
You know, we had little taglines on there like "gorgeous brew, gorgeous you." You know, playing with the words and the copy is also really important. So we've thought of everything from the mechanics of the system to hold everything together, the flexibility to allow those tiers to come through, and then that canvas to promote something that is truly wonderful that tells the story of the product. And if it's just a coffee cup, that is not something that gets left behind. I think when you look at the range and you shop it, you can see just how different and immersive these different products are while still being a family. But when something is very different category to category, and it takes such a huge lift of design, that is what actually makes the speed of this rollout even more impressive because you're not just doing a cookie cutter guideline
Mhm.
adaptation job. You know, Equator hates the word adaptation. It sounds mechanical and emotionless. This is about making the most every single time you get a product. When you hold on your hands, you've got gelato in this hand and chocolate in this hand, and it's just a piece of art that's telling a loyal story of what the fresh market stands for.
Michael, from the designer standpoint, when you're going through a project like this and you're evolving a look for a retailer, is there a balance or any concern that the refresh could maybe alienate any customers who, have a familiarity with the look and the brand as it is?
Yeah, I mean, you know, design has to come with consideration and thoughtfulness. And I think if you ignore and can't look through the eyes of your customer, you are basically shortchanging the customer. This was about thinking, are we shortchanging the customer now? Let's give them something to be moved by. You know, when you create design can always perform a task, but when you can create design that makes a difference, actually enriches a customer's lives, just like the tastes and the experiences of the fresh market offering a product, the design's got to stand up, has a responsibility to stand up to that. That's where it was actually falling down before. But you're right, we have to think about don't confuse the customer. If the customer is used to a color navigation in a large coffee range, don't go changing all the things, actually help them shop it. But if you can actually increase the appetite appeal and make it more immersive and indulgent and seductive, then you push on those levers. Don't change hierarchy if the way you shop something is the way they need to understand it. Think about the claims. Can you improve the shoppability? Can you improve the claims? Are you saying all that you should be saying? Are you saying too much? Are you missing an opportunity to? We said to the Fresh Box in the beginning that this, I think you remember this, Michelle, this brand should feel like when I was walking down the aisles with Michelle in the very first instance of our first date walking around the shop together and all the other guys. So she was telling me stories of we only picked this tomato supply because the alkaline of the soil in Illinois is the certain pH balance. And it's like, oh my God, even for a can of tomatoes. And when you get to the incredible gelatos and these other products, they have all these other stories to tell. So we wanted to create a brand where the packaging felt like there was an associate in Fresh Market walking around with the guests and talking to them like a friend about these
Mhm.
products. And if the packaging can do that task for you, why not actually improve the customer experience and make it even more intimate than it was before? I hope that answers your question, but I think it's a bigger answer to the question that you asked. But yes, we always have to consider the customer and put them at the center of everything first.
Michelle, was that a concern from the folks on your side at all, or were you just, we need to refresh this, and our shoppers, we know that who they are, and they'll get used to this and like it.
Well, I think for us, we had just done some research. We knew that our shoppers resonated with us and thought of us as a premium quality, wellness driven, chef inspired brand. And that was great. But we just needed to elevate it to that so that we could continue to tell that story and then add that personality in. So I think as my co-leader with me as the brand ambassadors and stewards, we both have been at the Fresh Market for years. I just completed 13 years at the Fresh Market. So we have a long history of what the brand is, what we stand for. So when it came to continuing to resonate with our guests on who we were, I think that was where we played that. We went back and forth on a concept just to make sure that we did tell the same story, that we did do the same color cues, that we did have some of the same expectations and the things that a guest would notice or know to make sure that they still resonated, that this was the Fresh Market brand, while getting them to start seeing us in a little different light as well. So I think the goal was, don't alienate the current, but we need to start attracting new as well. And to be honest, that is really where most of our focus went, was towards, let's start attracting a new guest.
And you have to validate the design, Greg. Sorry, just to add that, is obviously we do all of that work, but we did a massive amount of consumer research as well. So Equator is a massive proponent of asking the customer and checking. So we do all the work in the beginning to understand, then we do all the design, and then we actually have to go and validate that design and put it through research. Now, research to a lot of brands is a very scary black hole where no one ever is going to know how it's going to come out the other end, and everyone's crossing their fingers. But when we go into that, because we control and moderate and work very closely with the client, we ask the right questions to hopefully get the right answers. You have to moderate in a way where you're telling the story of what the brief was and ask the customer the right questions. So we did that, and we got some really great feedback of all these, the loyalists and the new, to see if they're understanding not only what the fresh market has always been about, but what the fresh market is now elevating to be about. And then is that design communicating and doing that story justice? So you ask all those different questions, and then you take that and inform it. And I have to say, when the designs and the research came back, there was a few little things of each one, but it was very easy development to go after that, wasn't it, Michelle? I mean, it was not a scary task. So the results were in and just validated everything, which I think increased our confidence as a team to move it along, knowing we'll go in the right direction.
Michelle, has there been any feedback from your customers on this redesign?
So that is a hard thing to get from your customers, right? It's like, do you go out and you create a campaign and say, "Oh, look at all the new looks"? You don't. You're really trying to tell the story and trying to get, "Hey, this is the same great item. It's just got a new look." So that is something that we're continuing to try to navigate on. How do you actually hear from your guests around the look, and what does that look like? And that is something that we are actually working with the marketing department on, as we look to create a larger campaign to continue to talk about the fresh market, our products, and just who we are.
And watch the shelf and see how quick the chocolate vanishes from it. That'll always tell you how the Christmas.
Well, that sales also always help in telling that. So to that point, I can give you just a little snapshot. So one of the new items that we recently, well, it was last October that we launched, was with one of the items that we actually won one of our awards for at Vertex. It's our kettle chips. And if you'd see the design is just absolutely gorgeous. Great price point, great product, some innovative flavors. And those are outperforming the forecast. The last two flavors that we were kind of out there on, 147% of forecast and over 217% of forecast for us on those. So we've seen some really good results from the new design, especially.
And Michelle, as you look forward, how do you feel this refresh positions Fresh Market for future growth in what is an increasingly competitive environment out there?
I feel like it now has set us a step ahead. Before this redesign, honestly, I felt like we were about 5 years behind everyone else. And now I feel like now we're leading what brand design should look like in store brands. And I think that's evident just from the Vertex Awards, as to what we were able to do in such a short time, with Equator helping us and taking us by the hand and guiding us down that path. But it also helped them win Agency of the Year as well. So I do think it's it has put us in a place where we can start to resonate more with that guest that we are going after, that we aspire towards. I think people are starting to look at us in a different way and saying, oh, that's the fresh market. I think those who didn't know who we are now starting to become aware of who we are. And those who had old perceptions of us, I think, are starting to look at us in that different way. So I think it positions us to really just move forward and attract who we need to attract and elevate our brand and just take us forward in innovation, not only from packaging, but we've got a lot of amazing products that I think have just sat on a shelf and left undiscovered. And now with this new visual look, this new packaging, they just beg to be discovered. They beg to be picked up. And so the next stages for us, packaging, dead on. The experience in the stores, dead on. Looks great. What we need next is that marketing campaign that continues to build that awareness with our guests. And that's what we're working on.
And Michael, the as other retailers out there maybe take a look at what Fresh Market has done and may find a little inspiration in this, but maybe are a little hesitant to take a similar step, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think first of all, you've got to ask the questions who you are, you know, and what you're aspiring to be. I think Fresh Market have a very clear vision of what they want to do. They're also revamping their experience inside their stores as well. So it was the kind of the last run on the ladder to make sure that the packaging felt like it belonged inside those new stores and also worked in the older ones until they could be revamped. So I think you've got to know who you are, know your environment, know your customer, know where your white space is, get an agency that you trust. You have to build that trust. I think to get to that point that you're talking about, you have to have that mutual trust with each other, that you become on this journey together and you're doing it as one team. And that's quite rare. That doesn't always happen because I think you have to trust each other. And I think the more the design agency feels trusted and connected to what that vision is, the more you feel empowered to push it. You need to have the team, like Michelle said, and that's why I think a retailer should ask themselves these questions first. If you're trying to do a revolutionary piece of design, you need to be confident that you can actually push it through to the real world and get it in the wild. I think those very small intimate design reviews we had in the week, they actually started to become like the thing that you look forward to the most in the week.
100%.
Because it was a celebration of design. And that's why we picked this job. That's why I get up in the morning, to have moments like that where you feel like you can really push something and the other side's going to love it as much as you do, where you're not designing to a prerequisite of what you think the personality of the client is, or the committee of how they might have to push things through, or will their boss approve it, or will their boss's boss make a change that is different to the change or the feedback that they gave you. And then you start to get all this swirl, and eventually design just gets sadly diluted. So if you are ready to really believe in what you want to do with your brand, and from the top to the bottom, you have alignment to really allow that agency to realize it with you, then I think you can really think about doing it. And what is that problem to solve, which I think was your first question at the beginning of this podcast, is what are you trying to solve? And then really trusting each other, because every time we did another category, I see it was like, what can we do this time kind of approach? And it still feels like a unified thread to the ice cream, to the chips, but it's going to be something special. Think about every single project as a potential award winner. And that's how we thought about it in the beginning. And it's kind of a cocky thing to say, but it's not said without confidence. I told Michelle she would win Retailer of the Year at the beginning of this project. So, she plugged me to get Agency of the Year, but it started out with them getting Retailer of the Year. And you get that by winning the most. And, your customers don't lie. It has to be something beautiful. So if a client is ready for that step, the retailer is ready for that step, then I think the questions you ask are the ones of yourself first, and then it builds from there.
And Michelle, any advice you would offer?
Yeah, I think I'm 100% in agreement with him. You have to trust the ones you partner with for the right reasons. and you have to have the same mutual goal. There's no ego trips here. And honestly, we didn't treat them like they were our agency. We treated them like they were part of the fresh market. And we told them up front, to know the brand, you have to be the brand. And so we immersed them in, we brought them in, had them taste ridiculous
Mm.
amounts of food. We did the whole submersion.
Very
It's
early
like,
in the
if you're
morning,
going
I
to be
might
all
say.
in, you gotta know what it looks like and feels like to be here. And then once you hire them, you have to trust that they know what they're doing. And sometimes you just have to say, you know what, I may not love what this is subjectively, but I see what this can do. And we would ask their opinion, and we would also ask some of the millennials and our Gen Zers that were on the call and say, what would you buy on this? In fact, I and my co-leader loved this whole design aspect that we are going after from a seasonal standpoint. We asked every millennial and Gen Z on the call and said, what's your favorite? And it was the exact opposite of what we liked. And so we said, you know what? We're not going to go with this one. We're going to go with the one that you guys like. And that's what we did. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Um, but sometimes this is where you just have to trust that those who you hired to do the job, let them do their job.